Hi, and welcome to Business Influencers. Hope everyone is having a great week. Again, we are so excited each and every week. The listenership continues to grow because of you. We want to thank you, listeners, for the opportunity to not only receive value from this show, which is our commitment to you, but sharing it with other people. Again, the more that we get it out there to more people, the more we can provide quality content where we can bring in subject matter experts from all areas of the world, sharing their experience and helping to raise your level of influence and business to the next level. For those that are new to Business Influencers, again, you found us here through TALRadio. We also encourage you to follow us on Apple and Spotify and our video portion of the show on YouTube. Again, if you are new, this show runs about a half an hour each week. And again, your input and your insights will help us tremendously to make sure that we are raising the bar to help deliver content that takes your level of influence and business to the next level. For any of you out there that are looking to take your business to that next level in terms of revenue and raising your net profit margin to increase your business valuation, reach out to us at sustainablesuccess.net/contact. We'd be more than happy to do a review and an assessment of where your business is and where you desire to be, where we can provide you some insights to strategies to take your business in terms of revenue and net profit margin to raise your business valuation. Again, that's sustainablesuccess.net/contact. Reach out to us. Be great to chat with you. Well, we got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about growing and staying personal. And we're here with Divian Mistry. And he is a fantastic. I've gotten to know Divian over the last few months. We've worked on a webinar. He hosts a lot of different webinars and has a lot of collaboration partners. He is a marketing expert for personal brands who want to grow their business and use proven, time-tested strategies. After starting his first business at the age of 14, he became known as the ticket master at university and has helped clients create 6 months of income within just 3 weeks. He tripled event sales within 24 hours and quadrupled event registrations within 1 month. He raised 5,000 pounds for the Make-A-Wish Foundation at a charity event he hosted with keynote speaker Kevin Green from the TV show The Secret Millionaire, and has been featured in 2 business books. And without further ado, we welcome Divian Mistry to the show. Divian, how are you doing today?
Hey, Chris, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, we are so excited to have you here. And I love the topic that we're going to talk about today, growing and staying personal. Because I always say that everything that you do that when you give value to people comes from the inside out. We have to address things personally in order for that to project outward. Talk about it from your perspective, what the title is about and what you'll be sharing today with growing and staying personal.
Yeah. So when a business wants to grow, at the beginning, when you first start a business, it's all about making sales. You're very personal. It's you running the business and sales coming in and you're project manager. You're doing everything. And then it gets to a point where you're like, well, now I need to stop doing everything. I need to start growing, right? And especially, when you want to start scaling and growing your business, you've got to hire people and you've got to keep creating that ability to connect with your clients, because ultimately that relationship with your potential clients is what makes the sales and creates that momentum in your business. But when you start to grow, you get to a point where it may not be possible to do everything in the same way you did before. So what I mean by that is, for example, at the beginning, you might go networking and you might be one-on-one networking and getting clients one-on-one, but you get to a point where just doing that all the time just completely uses up the whole of your diary, and there's not space necessarily to do anything else and work on your business. So really the conversation today is, well, how do you keep doing some of that? How do you keep doing the things that brings the clients in, that makes it feel personal, that makes it feel like they're getting you and they're getting that personal touch, whilst still creating leverage for yourself to be able to grow and do more things, right? Because oftentimes in business, one of the latter things that we give to other people to do is the sales element, right? That's our little baby. Like, We want to sell stuff. We want to get to know people. But how do you do that? That's when you're trying to scale your business up and grow.
Yeah, I love that. And what would you share, the people that are listening right now, Divian, and those that will be listening there, what would you say is a process that works very well, or at least something to start with?
So something to start with, really, and this might seem very obvious, but isn't always very obvious, is when you're transitioning, you need to start thinking about, well, how do I talk to more people at once? How do I go from one-to-one conversations to one-to-many conversations? Because they still get the level of personal touch in the one-to-many conversations, and you get to filter people before you have a one-on-one conversation by having the one-to-many to begin with. But the key thing that's really important about this, which is a lot of people miss this, is when you're having that one-to-many conversation, you can't turn into a robot. And we see this sometimes with bigger, especially online businesses, when they're making sales and running webinars and things like that. They churn as many people through that webinar as they can. They make it a presentation that, yes, connects with that person because of a story or whatever, but it doesn't feel personal because there's 1,000 other people on that call and you're just doing a presentation to a whole massive group of people. And the best presentations I've ever done and the best presentations I've ever seen done to big groups of people, one of my mentors, I remember once did a presentation to, this was years before he became my mentor, but he did a presentation to at an event that had multiple speakers. Nobody was selling. There was only one sale made at the event, and we're talking, well-known, some of them very well-known speakers, and probably about 800 people in the room, and the level of the way he made it feel so personal to everybody really got me to see that actually that personal touch completely changes how people act in the room. He made people laugh. He made people look at he made people laugh, but he made people look at their business seriously. And he brought a whole chunk of things into the equation. And a lot of people miss this when they start doing presentations to bigger groups of people. It becomes this boring, mundane, non-personal, non-interactive, just talking to the audience type thing.
Yeah, it seems like it's just scripted, robotic, and when you make it would it be safe to say that it's subconscious, you're connecting with somebody or people subconsciously on shared values, something that's compelling to them, like it touches into a pain point, but in a way that says, hey, I have to do something about it, or wow, these are the results that maybe I would like to have, but I just don't. I mean, I'd love to achieve, but I don't currently have. And you're not being told what to do. You're just listening, and now you're empowering me to be part of my own solution. I think that I always get most value out of that. Would that relate to being personal? That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I think all of them things, and the other thing that I think layering on top is and this is so important because I consume a lot of content around marketing and sales to make sure I'm like constantly improving what I'm doing. And one of the things I've found is people miss that bit where when they're doing these things, they forget to show people stuff, and instead they end up telling people stuff. And it's the showing that makes it interactive and makes it personal, makes it connect with them. So, like, for example, and this doesn't just, I just want to be clear, this is not about just presenting one to many. That's one step you can take, right? It's not the only thing that we're talking about here. It's one of the steps. But when the show not tell is so important, right? Because it's not about me standing in front of you, making jokes and make it feel like, I'm telling the story that you're hearing. Because I'll give you an example. I'm sure you know of a guy called Tony Robbins, world's #1 peak performance coach, and he did a webinar with two other guys, Dean Grazio and Russell Brunson, and they had 270,000 registrations, probably apparently one of the biggest webinars in the world ever. And I didn't attend the webinar because I wasn't interested, but I watched the replay, and it was just story after story after story, which connects to a certain type of person. But what it lacked is this element of how do you get people to really feel like you're involving them in the conversation. And the way you do that is, for example, you could actually get them to do something like make a let's say we're doing a business presentation, sit there while you're listening to this and make a calculation. Where's your business at? If we take what you do, for example, they could sit there and pull out a few figures and go, well, if I increased my revenue in this area by 1%, that area by 1%, this area, etc., and get them to actually do the calculation themselves, because that gets them involved, as opposed to just telling them, well, if we did this, da, 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 da. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. Absolutely. Makes total sense. I think it's so important. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and that kind of extra layer of understanding exactly where your clients are at and how to facilitate I don't like using this word because it's a very personal development-y type word, but effectively it's probably the best word I've got right now. But creating a transformation for them in that initial interaction, because that creates such a great relationship with them that they may not be ready right now for what you offer. We all know this in sales. Not everybody's ready this minute. They might be ready in 12 months' time. It doesn't matter. You're building your pipeline all the time. And that initial interaction, if you make it so personal and so unique, people will remember it. Because let's be real. These days, there's so many people who do presentations and so many people who sell stuff, and they do the same thing over and over again. And it's so boring and it's so unpersonal and it's so rubbish. Let's be honest. Most of them.
I agree. And Divian, as an influencer, to influence people is to empower people to draw their own conclusion. That meaning that how are you being compelling to people over time throughout the buyer's journey? Where across those multiple touch points, networking, speaking, podcasts, website, it could be email campaigns, it could be a wide variety, digital media, so many different aspects. Because of that personal, this has to be consistent. This isn't something like you do just on a webinar, right? That personal touch with your content being shared. Can you share a little bit more about that on the consistency factor? Because I always feel like that when there's consistency, it resonates. It kind of gets into to that person inside of them to start taking action at some point.
Yeah, so consistency is probably the most, what I've realized in business, and I've been in business since the first business I started was 14 years old, and since I'm 35 now, so it's been like 21 years effectively of doing different ventures. And what I've found is the number one thing that creates any success in anything in your life is just consistency. There's people who show up who are these experts in inverted commas. And I used to show up as one of these experts and not tell the full truth of how to actually grow a business. And I don't do that anymore because I realized the errors of my ways. Is the people who show up and they're like, oh, look at me. I was in property before. I did these 10 deals in the last 12 months. And it's like, yes, but you haven't told the story of the 15 years it took you to get to the point of doing the 10 deals in a year. Like how many times you failed, or I don't like the word failure, but learn lessons to be able to do 10 deals in a year and make that kind of cash. And so consistency is way more important, because if let's just take that example, if they had stopped along the way, they wouldn't have got them 10 deals in a year, right? So if we apply that to your business, to anybody's business, and go, okay, so how does this work in terms of creating experiences? If you create that one-off experience that wows people, they're going to remember you beyond anybody else, right? But one really great statement that somebody I know once said to me, they said, when you run a marathon, you do the miles in the marathon, and then most people just stop. Business is a marathon. Most people stop. And then there are the odd few people who decide to go the extra mile. And because the extra mile not many people go the extra mile, because of that, there's not much competition in that extra mile, so you stand out. But let's be real, things happen in life, right? So you do something amazing and people connect with it, and then you don't do anything for 12 months. Well, yes, they're going to remember it, but there's so much noise in the world that it's very easy for you to drift off into your life and deal with the kids and the dog and this other client and and all these other things that come up, that you will still remember it when someone talks about it. You go, oh yeah, that was an amazing experience, but it won't be at the forefront of your mind, right? It starts to work its way backwards. So we have to keep re-engaging people in that way. And it doesn't have to, consistency can look like whatever it needs to in your marketplace. So I'm really big on context, because there's too many people out there go, use this strategy, and don't give any context as to who should and shouldn't use that strategy and what point in business, etc. So context is really important. Like in some industries, it's the norm to send emails, for example, 5 times a week. In other industries, it's the norm to send it once a month, right? And so, for example, if you're sending an email as that, the level of consistency depends on your marketplace. I don't like sending emails like, every day. I think it's
a little overkill. Yeah, that consistency, like you said, doesn't mean it has to be every day, but it can be consistency across different platforms to get that message across, that resonates, what's compelling to them.
Yeah, and I think what's really important, and this is one of the things that I really do with my clients and help them with, is, let's be real, when you're running a business, unless you're a massive, a huge business, you probably don't have the manpower to have an expert on every single platform that exists on this planet to be able to market effectively in every single possible way. Now, maybe you do have a couple of people in your team who can do multiple different platforms, but if you really want to make a platform work, you have to be very, very deeply an expert at that and spend a lot of time on it, right? So here's the thing: when people come to me, one of the big things what I'm really big on is, let's work with your strengths, right? If you don't have a massive team of people, great, let's work with your strengths. If you've got a team of people, let's work with their strengths, right? And let's focus on their strengths in creating like an experience that really engages your audience. So if we take email, for example, because we just started speaking about that, loads of people do email marketing, but the reality is most people are churning out exactly the same thing over and over again as everybody else. It's not personal. It doesn't feel different, etc. I've done it. I'm going to be honest, I've probably still got some funnels that are not very good, great experiences, because I'm helping other people and you don't always get time, the cobbler's shoes kind of scenario, right? But you want to make it different. So how do you do that? Like, I know somebody who, when I joined their email list, at that time, there was a little app called Bonjoro, and it pinged them every time someone joined their list. And so he, one day, just once a week, would go on, and Bonjoro allows you to record a quick 30-second video, welcoming me, let me know if you need any help. And it sends that personal video to that person who's just joined your list. Now, if you're in a high-touch, high-value business where each client's worth a lot of money, you don't need a massive database. You need a quality database, right? And you need to send quality emails. So that experience, and everything I'm talking about, by the way, applies more so to people in high touch, high margin, like high ticket type sales than it does to people in low margin. It still works in low margin, of course, like low ticket sales, of course it works, but it's going to be even more effective in high ticket sales. So like that's touch, because each client to him is worth a lot of money. It's not a small amount of money. So that touch connects you with that person, right? And I've already had an interaction with him on an 1.5 hour long webinar. And then he did that, and then a month later I bought from him. Like it didn't take much longer for me to buy from him, because I had such a great experience so quickly. I was like, I want to buy something from you, and I bought something that wasn't very expensive to begin with. It's about £600, and then a year later I spent thousands with him for a couple of years, and that escalated very quickly because the value was that the experience was it was personal, right? It felt personal, but in a way that was leverageable for him.
Wow, that's fabulous. Getting back to, I know I asked you this earlier, those listening right now that, maybe they've struggled in some of their ways of connecting with their audience and adding this value, just to some of the points where we've made some of these mistakes on our own. And so what do you feel what would be the first step that you would think would work best?
So if somebody is struggling to connect,
just kind of start the process. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of times what entrepreneurs miss is when they don't connect with their audience, usually the reason is because they don't understand their audience.
Yeah.
Right. And what they're trying to do is they're seeing other people send out emails, do webinars, do round tables and networking events and making sales. And we have a confirmation bias, right? So we see what we want to see. We see an email go out, and then we assume that that person who sent the email out has made sales and that they're very successful. And therefore, I need to send that email out to make sales, right? So you copy the email, you send it out, and you don't make sales. Why? Because your audience is not their audience. You've not done the things that they have done to get to the point where that email makes sales. So the number one thing to do if you're not connecting with the audience is, and I didn't used to do this, but this revolutionized my business over the last few years, right? Is client development interviews. This is where you go to potential clients, ask for, it could be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, depends on how busy they are. Like, make sure that you respect their time. And you say, look, I just want to have a conversation. This is not a sales conversation. It's just me gathering information. You ask strategic questions to understand the words they're using to explain what their challenges are. The number one question I love to ask, and you can vary how you ask this, as in the word you use, but the number one question that I want to get to the bottom of is, what is your number one bleed neck problem in your business? Now, I don't always use the word bleed neck because it's very extreme. But you want to say, what's the number one biggest pain in your business that you want to solve? And you reassure them that this is not a sales conversation. This is just you gathering data. Make sure it's not a sales conversation, because you will lose their trust like that if you switch and bait and switch and have that conversation. Now, at the end of that conversation, you can, and I would ask more questions than just that one, but that's the number one question I want to ask. You might ask some demographic questions to make sure you understand what type of business they are, how big they are, et cetera, to see how the problems relate to the size of the business and the type of business they have. And then at the end of that, you might say to them, look, I'm working on a solution to this. Would you be interested in me just showcasing that solution to you when it's ready? And if the answer is yes, you've set up an opportunity now to sell to them. Now, not hard pitch them, but present your offer, what you have to offer to them. And they might be interested. And if they're not, you might ask them, who else do you know who might be interested in this? And you start to get more connections. And so that's what number one thing I do is the client development interview. Is people miss this. And you should do this literally every 12 months. At a minimum, you should be redoing client development interviews every 12 months. You should never stop doing them, because you get so much information and your business develops as well so quickly nowadays. You get so much information that it will transform the way in which the solutions you offer and the way that you sell them solutions. And I've seen this, even one word or a couple of small words that are different in the way you sell can make a world of difference to whether people buy or not.
Wow, that's powerful. Powerful. I love what you shared, and I think that's so important. We hope listeners that you're taking notes here, and there's some great information. And obviously, you're going to learn more about Divian here shortly, where you can get in contact with him for more information. Any other areas, like just briefly, that you could share in the next minute or so, Divian, on any other things that can give some great tips to make it more personal?
Yeah, usually when people deliver services as well, one of the biggest challenges that people have is they don't. I learned this probably actually only a year ago, just over a year ago. One of my mentors says, always book the next conversation. So one of the main things we've been doing for the last few years is websites and funnels and automations, but always book the next conversation. And I didn't realize the impact of this, right? With websites, a lot of people are techie, and it's very easy to build the website, send an email, go review it, let me know what we need to change, etc. But that's very impersonal, and you don't get to have a conversation with any challenges they have. So what happens is the relationship is not a deep relationship, it's a shallow relationship, and therefore the experience is shallow. and they're less likely to refer people to you and have a great experience and shout about you. If you book the next call, even if that's a 15-minute check-in, just, hey, just updating you, the website's going well, we've done this. I'm using the example of websites because that's what we do. But if it's something else, it might be something, whatever it is for you. You keep checking in with them. And through that check-in, I can tell you right now, I built such deep relationships with clients. Some of them have referred 2 or 3 people to me before the project's even over. Right. And that's massive. Right.
Yeah.
And that depth. And it doesn't have to be you. If you've got a team, get the team to do it. It's fine. But the regular check-in throughout the project or the engagement is the key to really creating that experience that is personal. And even if you can't jump on a call, maybe 1 week, send an email.
Yeah.
Right. Or send a video update. Right. Instead of an email. Even if it's 2 minutes, it doesn't matter. 2 minutes doesn't take a lot of your time, but it creates that personal effect. Remember, and there's so many other things I could suggest. Like there's a gazillion other things. But
No, I bet. And we'll definitely have that for another show as part 2 to growing and keeping it personal. I know we're towards the end of the show, and I want to make sure that all the listeners that are listening now and those listening later can get to know you more about this particular area, finding out more about maybe, what their websites look like, what they could be. I know you get involved. Let people know what is the best way they can get in contact with you, anything that you'd like to offer them as well.
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. I guess we'd put them, the link, there's no point in me trying to spell it out right now. We'd put them links in the show notes, right? And they can click their links from there. So Divian Mistry, you can search for me. Very few people have the name Divian Mistry, so it should be relatively easy to find me. But There are some people. I found out I'm not the only one, which is weird because my name is made up. So it's weird to think there's other people with a made up name like mine. The other way is you can send me an email, which is divian@headachefreewebsites.com, which will obviously come straight to me. And the third way, which you can just go straight to my website, headachefreewebsites.com. And on there is a free guide that you can download on there. And that will get you onto my email list and show you some great stuff you can do with that free guide and implement on your own website and in your own journey.
That's fabulous. Well, Divian, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today, taking time out of your busy schedule. We come with much gratitude to thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. It's been wonderful sharing this and being on the podcast and, getting to know you in the last few months as well. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much. And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers with TALRadio. Again, we encourage you to listen to this show in its entirety here later today. And yes, again, reach out to Divian here on LinkedIn, also to his email. We'll also have information in the show notes that you can reach out to him. Take advantage of it. Take a look at your website. Share with him. He might be able to give you an assessment of where you at, where you could be. No obligations. He'd be more than happy to help you. He's a genuine stand-up guy, and we encourage you to definitely take him on that offer. Thank you so much, everybody. We wish you a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week.